Next presenter, Nina Yocom. Nina is a self-taught artist, and I'm really anxious to hear your story. Great about that. So you have the floor.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being here today, especially the gusty, rainy weather. I know this is like part and parcel as we transition into the spring, but tomorrow's going to be 61 and sunny on Sunday. So that's lovely. So thanks for coming out. So my name is Nina Yocom. I was born and raised in suburban Philadelphia in a town called Malvern. I don't know if you all ever heard of Malvern. Not too far away, just about an hour. If you go the turnpike the right way, this morning I went the wrong way, and just a little, I was like, there's a reason for this. I'm going to get there on time. But when you get on the turnpike the wrong way, that's it. You're done. You got to wait, turn around. Yeah, got to pay more. So I had a little adventure this morning. My husband and we call each other the wrong way Yocoms. Every time. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in suburban Philadelphia. Public school. My mom volunteered for a program that you might be familiar with. It's called Art Goes to School. Has anybody heard of that? Raise. You actually did, and you did it. God bless you, because that introduced me to fine art at a very, very impressionable young age, which is the ideal. You're introduced to the masters, you're introduced to the color wheel, and you get to know in a very really accessible way to see these masters. So these volunteers would come into our schools and they'd bring pieces of art and then a little bit of biography about the artists. And then we could ask any question we wanted. And I'm sure you guys got some really interesting questions, because kids, they see what they see, there's no filter. And they say what they say, there's no filter. So that was such a wonderful introduction. My father is a photographer. He's an award-winning photographer. So I think that had an influence on my own perspective as well. So with my mom volunteering at Art Goes to School, we've always had a great appreciation for fine art in our home. We came from humble means. We couldn't afford originals, but we had wonderful reproductions. And those were always up on our walls. And I used to spend a large amount of my time as a kid just staring at these pieces of art, and just like you all probably did in your youth and growing up, and just getting lost in the scenes. And I wanted to understand, what is it about, what is it my parents see in these gems that, what is it so important about having these pieces of art in our home? And just having them in our home was very influential as well. So fast forward, I went to Drew University. If anybody's ever heard of Drew, it's a little bit north of here. I went for liberal arts, had no exposure to art. However, the liberal arts lens lent me to very, great overview education. After that, I spent a lot of time just experimenting with artwork, watercolor, acrylics, just over time, taking classes here and there, taking workshops. And then a few years ago, I had an artist friend, and she introduced me to alcohol inks. Has anyone heard of alcohol inks? Raise your hand. Okay, so everybody's heard of them. My introduction was, what are alcohol inks? I've never heard of them. I had no idea. So the first thing I did was I started researching just what they were, what they looked like, who was producing them, and then a lot of just experimenting. I got some books. I got a lot of art books for influence, went back and looked at the color wheel, reoriented myself with composition, and then started taking classes specifically on alcohol inks, and I have this wonderful, wonderful mentor who's been so influential to me as well. So that was approximately 2 years ago. Question?
So, do you know how old alcohol in art is?
How old is it?
Start?
I would say probably about 15 years ago is when they first started producing alcohol inks. And then over, I'd say the past 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, they have become more and more popular. And a lot of people associate alcohol inks with craft, with kind of like, you go to a workshop and you play. And that's a lot of fun. And you can do those kinds of workshops and you can produce amazing things on your own. And then you can also take it to the next level and you can produce some of the finer art, which is what I do at this point. I like to jury into shows. Maria Morales, I met at Powell Arts, if you all have ever heard of Powell Arts. She and I were both in the exhibitions there, in shows, also Medford Arts, if anyone's ever heard of Medford, which is very close by as well. So Collingswood is right down the street as well. So those were a few places in New Jersey. I do also show frequently in Philadelphia, in Center City. I sell my work both in person, online, in exhibitions, galleries, and anywhere I can. So just to give you a bit of an overview, so you can do a lot of things with alcohol. And I'm showing you a lot of samples of things that are works on paper, which is synthetic paper. So alcohol inks, they work on a surface, and it has to be a flat surface so that the inks flow. And I'll show you on my presentation how that works. You can work on different substrates, including smooth prime panel, Yubo paper, synthetic paper, that's a brand name, panel, Yubo. And then for something like this, and I'll have to pass this around, this is Yubo paper. You buy them in rounds, then you can adhere them onto a wood panel and then resin them for protection.
Now, the resin, is it heat resistant?
No, it is not heat resistant. If you ever want a coaster or put something hot on it, you have to be careful with that. So if you're doing some kind of toaster, you really have to look for, there are some resins that are a little more heat tolerant, but there's no resin that is heat safe. So I'll pass that around, and like I said, you can adhere it onto a wood panel, resin it for protection, and then I think that the resin kind of makes it pop a little bit. So I'll pass that around as well. You can also work on a surface called Frederick's watercolor canvas. It comes primed, so you can immediately start applying the alcohol onto that. And that's an example of one I've done that was framed, and it was unstretched canvas, and it was stretched onto a panel and then framed. I did not frame this. This was framed. Yes.
Can you show it under the camera? So
Yeah.
people online can see.
Absolutely. That's not quite fair as I'm showing these things around. So this is on canvas. And this again is Frederick's brand watercolor canvas.
Now, that's totally smooth.
Yes, it's a smooth surface.
So a watercolor canvas, does that come in like 140 pounds or,
It can come in large rolls, and I have a sample that I'll be passing out.
and a cold press versus a hot press or a hot press?
I'll have to look at I brought along the canvas description, so it should be on there, as well as the weight and how it's primed, but it does come primed. This is another example. This is on Yubo paper, and the Yubo paper, I really liked these colors together. And what I did is I cut the Yubo paper, then I mounted it to a panel. If you look on the back of this, it's just a simple box frame, and this panel glues in, so you can adhere it onto the panel, resin it so it's shiny and protected, and then pop it into a shadow box. So these are just some pretty cool examples of what you can do with the actual work. Another surface I like to work on is tile, just plain old ceramic tile. And you can get just 4x4, 6x6 white ceramic tiles, and then you can apply the alcohol inks onto the tile. The great thing about working on tile, you wipe it off, start all over. Make a mistake, wipe it off, And it's play until you finally have something. Yes.
Can I ask you a question about panels?
Mhm.
The wooden panels?
Yes.
What do you do before you, are they white when you buy them?
They're brown.
Right.
I don't prime them. I work on UPO paper. I cut the paper out, then I use an adhesive to mount the UPO onto the panel. So it doesn't
But you
matter,
never just use them.
never just
panel.
use the panel, although you could gesso, it's called Kills 2. Kills 2, you can put onto any surface and it will make that surface waterproof. So as long as you're working on any surface that is non-porous, glass, tile, metal, I've seen it all. Plastic. I've seen people use, sheets of plastic to work on as well. So there's any surface that is non-porous, you can work on. And you can also take smaller pieces and you can get a little crafty. So for example, this is just a little box where you can buy something like that, and then you can pop in an original piece of the UPO. And I very frequently will sell boxes that have an opening on the front. And this was just a little box from Target. And then just, make it clean, do a little bit of sanding, not too much work, and that you can produce things like that. Another thing I like to produce are also, this is an example of, this is just a plain wood block with a notch in the back so that this can be put on the wall or it can stand alone. And this is just a tiny piece of UPO with a pretty cool design. I mounted it onto I painted, this is just select pine, just cut up Home Depot, slice it up. My husband slices them up for me. I paint them white. Then I adhere the UPO onto the surface, and then I resin the whole piece, except for the back, for protection. Question? Yes, there's a fine art to doing resin, and I have learned through experience the right way to do it. And actually on my Instagram account, I actually have a little tutorial that shows what is some shortcuts so that it is nice and even and it flows nicely and it runs over. And that's a very good question. For example, when you're working with resin, and I'll pass this around. This sample I'll pass around because this one is a piece of UPO alcohol ink mounted to a wood panel that's about 1 inch thick. And as you can see on the back of this, I blue tape it. When I blue tape the back and I pour the resin on the front, the resin drips down, but it doesn't, then I can peel the blue tape off. All that resin has run down with all of the extra stuff. That I learned through experience to use the blue tape. Otherwise, you're scraping away all of these extraneous drips of UPO. And when you do the resin, you hold it up onto a stand so that the resin flows flat and flows down the sides. And then you just scrape it off with a popsicle stick.
You pour it on and then you can spread it.
Popsicle stick. Just a popsicle stick. And then you coat the sides, scrape it, scrape the bottoms, and then you cure it overnight for probably 48 hours. And then you want to make sure that you cover it with a plastic bin so that all the dust particles don't float into your final product. So those are just some great examples. And I'll pass that around.
So obviously the resin is not going to interfere with you.
Correct.
So
So
that's why you don't use acrylic paint or acrylic sprays or.
So what I do is for when I finish any piece, whether it's panel, paper, any substrate, I always coat it for longevity with alcohol inks. There was a lot of concern about fading, just like pastels or watercolor, they're prone to fading. So you need to make sure that you always, and I always use Winsor Newton brand, which is from England. It's the best varnish. A lot of people use Kamar or just something you could buy at Hobby Lobby. They're just not good enough. The best quality, I want the best quality for longevity. So I use the best quality inks, the best quality substrates, and the best quality varnish. So I'll spray 3 coats of moisture protectant varnish, wait overnight 3 nights. Then I'll spray UV protectant spray, 3 coats of that, 3 separate nights, and just allow it to all cure. That will keep your alcohol inks from fading, as long as you keep them out of direct sunlight.
So the alcohol ink doesn't run or get disturbed when you spray these?
Correct. So when you spray, because you're spraying it, you're not coating it.
Right.
You're just spraying it. So when you spray it, the moisture resistant spray seals the inks on, so it will not move. They won't go, they will not be disturbed any longer.
Does the alcohol ink have to cure before you do this? You have to wait?
You should probably wait about I usually wait a day. So if I finish something, I'll let it sit, make sure that it's done. That's always, is it done? Am I done? And if I feel like I'm done, then I will spray and seal it, and then it's done.
And another thing, what do you use to secure the UFO onto another surface?
Sure. I use Golden, Golden. What is it called? Golden. I should have brought it with me. It is just a very light adhesive. But many people use a variety of different adhesives to secure it onto the wood panel.
How do you apply the
Adhesive
spray?
brush, right? It comes in a little jar, and it's golden, smooth, soft, smooth. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it's just a very simple adhesive that you brush on. You brush it onto the surface. You put the UFO down on the surface. Then you let that UFO. You put books on top of it. So I'll put like 15 Encyclopedia Britannicas for it to seal overnight, or probably 2 or 3 days, just to make sure that adhesive is stuck. Sure.
Do you still spray if you're going to do resin?
Yes, always. You must you resin on top of that, because you need that moisture protectant and you need the UV protectant. Most resins do not have UV protectant. I see that they're starting to, and alcohol inks as well. They are starting to, and I'll show an example for our friends who are watching. This is a brand that I use, and it's called Ranger alcohol inks. Ranger alcohol inks are very high quality. And alcohol ink producers are always looking for longevity. So they're starting to add more to the alcohol inks, even some things like UV protectant. So that's kind of exciting for someone like me who has to be very conscientious about longevity and UV protection. So what I'm going to do while you're all sitting and I'll get started on my demo, I'm going to pass around some of the substrates that I use, and you can just pass these around and tell. Simple, 6x6 ceramic tile. This is the dowel. I buy these on Etsy, and I will take, and I'll show that to our friends watching online. So I'll take like a dowel like this. And I'll take something like this. This is called Nara paper. Nara paper is a brand name of synthetic paper, and it's just like Yupo, but it's more heat resistant. You can buy those, you mount them, like I said, with that adhesive. I just brush it on, and I mount those, and the end result is something like this.
Now, are you mounting before you do your artwork?
No, I'm not after.
Okay.
Always. Yes, because I don't want to mount it and then it's up. There's always that. And then one surface that I've started working with is, I mentioned Frederick's watercolor canvas. This is a piece. I buy these in large rolls. And as you can see on the paperwork, they come in huge rolls. You just cut them out. And then you can stretch them when you're done, and you want to add them into, you want to have them onto the board, you can stretch them. And
Is this is texture.
yes, it's texture. And I'll pass around an example of that. So here's an example of a piece that I worked on recently. This is alcohol ink on watercolor canvas. And I'll pass it around so you can see. You'll see that the flow of it and the way it flows is so much different than what you see on the panels and what you see on the paper, which is a whole different ballgame. Another surface I like to work on that's very cheap is called craft plastic. Craft plastic is used by crafters, and this is a great substrate to work on, just like synthetic paper. But it doesn't compete very well.
Now, did you outline?
I did not outline any of that. That is just naturally forming with the alcohol. Another, you can also buy squares, and these are just different samples of different sizes. This is called narrow paper. This is about, what, 15 by 15? I think it's about 15 by 15. And you can buy, these are stain-free. One thing I like about narrow paper is it's stain-free. You can paint with it. And you can wipe it clean. It's a little more expensive than Yupo, but you can wipe it clean. Yupo comes in a variety of different sizes. These are 11 by 14 sheets of 50 sheets, and it is white. You can also buy Yupo paper translucent. Pass that around so you can feel that. So the actual paper, you can use either side, and it's just a nice, clean, thick surface to work. You can feel that. And that is called Yupo paper. And then I'm also going to pass around some of the pieces. Oh, I've got two pieces. So a couple of pieces I'll pass around. This is just a sample. I was experimenting with this piece. And this is just a Blick canvas panel that I picked up somewhere for free. And I was just curious to see what will the alcohol look like on the surface. This is not primed. This is just raw canvas. So I just was curious. So these are some examples of different papers and how they eventually wind up.
Now,
On canvas, I don't need to because it's primed. That's why I like using the Frederick's watercolor canvas. So this is an example of a round piece that can be mounted onto that dowel. And then finally, a couple of squares. And these are on the craft plastic. And just so you know, this one piece that I have up on screen, this is one color of alcohol ink, exclusively one color. The cool thing about alcohol inks is once you start working with them and you start using heat or air, the alcohol ink colors flow and just create these amazing, amazing different subcolors and layers. So that's just one color.
so I'm amazed, you just started off in 2 years.
Yes. It's a really interesting medium to master. It really is a lot of fun to master. Questions?
Now, do you adhere all of these different materials to something?
I'll either frame them.
Because I've done it in the past where I've just put a piece of Yupo in a frame. That's what it is.
And that's perfectly fine, but you do need to have, you don't want the alcohol ink to touch the glass. Just like watercolor or pastel, you don't want the alcohol ink to touch the glass. You want to have at least a little bit of a matte so that you don't hit the glass with it. So that would be ideal. But I have seen some people that do just put them right up against glass, I would not recommend that. Yeah. So, and in this large piece, this piece was originally 30 by, it was like a massive, I'll do a little bit. This was 30 by 40. You can buy huge pieces of what's called narrow paper, which I've shown you an example. And you can do like a ginormous piece. And then you can come back and say, okay, I only want a portion of this landscape piece. And I'm going to just decide what part of this giant piece do I want to frame within the confines of this particular 20 by 20 piece. And this is far, far different than what you've seen with the pretty pastels. So you can go way dark. You can do a lot of landscape work as well as some of the more flowery type work. Thank you. All right, you want to see it in action? All right, so what I have in front of me, this is called a smooth prime panel. This is one of my favorite substrates to work with because it tolerates heat. When you work with Yocom paper or synthetic paper, you are always challenged with, when you're using heat, it will buckle because it's synthetic paper. It's plastic. It's got plastic in it. So with heat and plastic, what happens? It bubbles. It corrupts the actual surface. So the demo I'll do today, I'll just use primed smooth panel. Another thing I like about smooth prime panel, you can buy these at Blick, at Jerry's Artorama. I think these are like an artist series. This is an 8 by 8. You can buy 10 by 10 and larger and larger and larger. And some of these pieces are over here. So what I use for alcohol inks, extra fancy, 91% isopropyl alcohol. That's it. 91% is your magic number. Isopropyl comes in 80, 99, but 91 is the magic formula. Alcohol inks are based with isopropyl alcohol. So these little droplets, these little jars of the alcohol ink, they're just highly pigmented color. And the base of it is isopropyl alcohol. So when you smell it, it actually smells like isopropyl alcohol. And as you can see, they come in a variety of different colors. There are different manufacturers. I like Ranger is the best quality, but you see things like T-Rex is another one. Pinata is another brand that I like Pinata as well. My absolute favorite are things called Copic ink refills. And a lot of alcohol ink artists use these refills. The colors are fantastic. Only drawback is they're from Japan and they're very expensive. So I use them sparingly. And these are actually used for, you can use alcohol ink markers. I don't use markers. I do not draw. However, I have seen alcohol ink artists draw realistically with alcohol ink, and it is unbelievable. I'm not in that world. My stuff is a lot more abstract. Another thing you can use is, I really like Pixis brand alcohol inks, and they have these very sparkly, they give a very interesting hue, kind of like a effervescent kind of looking like hue. Those are kind of fun to work with. Another thing I work with is when I do, one cool thing I like about alcohol inks is once it's dried, you can apply acrylic on top of the alcohol ink. And in some of the samples I have over here, for example, this piece, I finished the alcohol ink and then I used a template, a stencil, and then I painted with white acrylic paint on top of the alcohol ink. And as you can probably see here, what I like about using the white, before I varnish, I use the white paint and it takes on the color of the underlying alcohol ink. That's why I don't varnish before I put the acrylic on top, because I like the alcohol ink color to bleed through. And I think it looks pretty cool. And then you can also do a little bit of silver down in the corner as well. And then this has been sprayed. Once I was done, I spray it with the Winsor Newton varnishes, both for moisture and UV protection. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to be using a couple of tools. This is a heat gun, and you can buy these at Hobby Lobby. I bought this on Amazon for 20 bucks, 25 bucks. This is a heat gun or heat tool for crafts. It does not blow out flame. It's not that kind of a heat gun. If you do use a heat tool, you need to have two settings, high and low. Only use low, because the high will dry out the inks super, super fast. Remember, we're dealing with isopropyl alcohol, which dries way fast. So you have to move very quickly. When you use heat to push the inks along, the drying will happen a lot faster. So I do like to use a heat gun or heat tool. Then another one of my favorite little guys. Anybody recognize one of these? It's called the world's smallest hairdryer. Amazon. This shoots out a very low cool air. So I have more opportunity for the alcohol inks to move, and they're not going to dry as fast as it would with the heat gun. Usually I use an air brush. I didn't bring that because it's loud, and I don't want to spray you all with alcohol ink because it does kind of take off. So those are two tools I'll use. And another one I will use, I call a puffer. I don't know the official name, but this is specifically for alcohol inks. You can buy cheaper ones, but I only like to use this one, and it's produced by Tim Holtz Ranger Alcohol Ink Supplies and Line. So it's Tim Holtz Ranger Inks, and this is a Tim Holtz product. And what this does, just blows air. And what I will do is I will push along the alcohol ink with this kind of a puffer. A couple of other tools I'll use just to get the alcohol, isopropyl alcohol. These are just little straw-like things that will suck up some of the alcohol ink that you can place onto the substrate. And then if I'm doing a little more detailed kind of alcohol inks and I want to dilute some of the color, you can use something like this. It's called Pinata Claro Extender. You're absolutely right. There we go. Thank you. So this is Pinata Color Extender, and this will make the very highly pigmented alcohol ink a little bit less, it'll thin it out a little bit and make it a little more looser color. To keep the alcohol inks moving, many people use something called alcohol blending solution. This is isopropyl alcohol and glycerin, plain old glycerin, vegetable glycerin. You can actually make this yourself at home if you want to. And then finally, if I'm going to be doing with watercolor, if you ever see watercolorists use salt, has anybody seen that? The same effect will happen with spritzing with straight isopropyl alcohol. So if you do an alcohol ink piece and you want to make it look like kind of yes, they kind of separate. This. So what you do is when you're finished with the alcohol ink, you can literally just take that spritz bottle. It's around here somewhere. I lost it. You can actually just spritz the alcohol where you want it to go, and it will take on that kind of cool little design. So those are kind of the whole trick of the trade. Okay, let's get started on the piece. All right, so usually what I will just start out doing is I'll have my alcohol, just again, 91% alcohol. There's my spritz bottle, blew away. And I will take some alcohol and I'll lay it out onto this panel. Once I've got this laid on a panel, and I'm using a I'm using a lot of alcohol because again, it dries quick. This is a foam brush. Just, you can pick these up at Hobby Lobby, anywhere. Some people use like a brush. I like to use a foam brush. And all I'm doing is I'm just literally coating the entire surface of this panel before I start to apply the alcohol ink. I do not care if it runs off to the sides. I could blue tape the sides to prevent running, but with the smooth prime panel, the great news is that you can rub it off when you're done. You just take a cotton ball, paper towel, soaked with alcohol, and then you can rub off the sides with the alcohol. It's not going to stick to it. So that's nice and juicy and full of alcohol. And then I will select colors that I would like to use. For example, wild plum. And I can just literally just start setting down some of these colors. Once I start setting down the colors, the clock is ticking. So I will get out my heat gun and I'm going to start moving the alcohol inks. The neat thing about alcohol inks is you can start out with an idea in your head and it's going to just become what it wants to become. You have some control with heat and movement. So it's a fine balance between how you would like it to move, where you want it to go, how quickly you move, and what colors you use. So now I'm starting to see some dry spots and I'm going to come back in and I'm going to bring in another thing you can do is if you watch what I'm doing here, I just laid down a little bit more alcohol and I'm basically reinvigorating that alcohol. And then I'll start using this wonderful little puffer to place more of the alcohol where I want it to go. I like to use a combination. The heat makes the alcohol ink very dark, which I like the contrast between the light and the dark. So I will continue to layer in a little bit more alcohol. And again, we'll start moving it where I want it to go. And I can make it thinner or thicker, depending on how I push it. And many, many layers go into this. Sometimes I'll pick up my dryer, and as you can see, you can move it even more. So, whatever tool you use, you can make the shapes of your alcohol ink however you want it to lay out. And a lot of the alcohol ink work that I will do, there's layers upon layers upon layers. Combining colors. When you combine colors, unlike watercolor, the cool thing about the alcohol inks is they do not muddy. They will play with the other colors, but they don't muddy. So you can have this beautiful purple and push it into the plum. And notice you have a variety of different colors that it moves into. And again, you just keep pushing and pushing those colors out.
Does that mean you can't mix colors to make another color?
You certainly can.
Okay.
Yes. So I could take this purple and plum. I can take these together. I can put them into my little wells here, and I can combine them if you would like to do that. Or you can just combine them onto the actual panel itself.
So once it's dry, when you use that and then you put alcohol on top of it, will it make it fluid again?
Yes. The alcohol.
So it doesn't, drying is not permanent.
Drying is not permanent. So once it's dried, it is, you can reinvigorate the alcohol inks with alcohol over and over and over. I've seen people put aside a piece for 3 years and then they'll pick it up again. They'll throw more alcohol in it and it's a whole new piece. I never throw a piece away. I have literally, I think I literally took probably, I think I did this one away. I threw it in the trash because I was like, I don't like this base. I was like, I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it. And then I was like, wait a minute. What if I use stencil? Huh. And then I was like, wait a minute, this works. I can use a stencil, take that, what I thought was not a very good underlying alcohol ink piece, and then make it into something completely unexpected and different. And so I did pull that out of the trash. So I do hear people will get frustrated with alcohol inks and they'll say, I just can't do anything. I'm going to throw it away. Don't ever throw it away. You can always bring it back to life. In this case, I'm just going to add on a couple more colors. Again, I'm putting more alcohol down because I need the alcohol base for the colors to move. So I'm adding in a little bit of blue, and I think I'll puff that around a little bit. This blue is called Stonewash. This is a really light blue, which I really like. And again, as you can see, the inks will continue to change color and flow as you add more onto it. And then when I feel like I'm getting somewhere close to a layout, in this case. So notice here, the darker, that's from the heat gun. This is much lighter because I haven't hit it with heat. So watch what happens when I hit it with heat. And again, I'm moving these colors around and I'm pushing it where I want it to go, where I want it to center. And the dark, I love the darkness. So here I'm really pushing the heat because I like this line of this darkness right here. And I want to keep it.
I noticed that they're all like acrylic. Have you ever experimented with color and then add alcohol?
Actually, I've actually used black Yupo paper. Using black Yupo paper and then using some of these Pixis, rolled away from me, using some of these Pixis, they call them mythical hues. And they're very kind of shiny hues. And there's a little shaker in there. If you use these on black Yupo or black paper, you get a whole different kind of look. I'm going to pass this one around. This one actually has some of those hues. And can you see the shininess?
Metallic.
And it's almost like a metallic. There's a word that is absolutely escaping me. So you can layer with those to add more dimension. And you can play with that in the light so you can flip it back and forth and see more of the iridescence. Yeah, thank you. You win. Iridescence. That word was just not going to stick. It's iridescent. And actually, I might do a little bit of iridescence on this piece. So I'm going to continue and just keep adding a little bit more color and a little bit more alcohol. And as you watch, you'll see when you lay down straight alcohol, it's actually moving the alcohol away. See how it's getting white in there? So you can actually dilute with the alcohol. So I didn't put any color down. I'm just playing with the diluted. See this darkness here? I can still, again, I can keep moving that around.
Can you take a paper towel and actually wipe off too, you put alcohol on it?
You won't get all of it off. Actually, that's a great question.
Like if you want to use it, you can have a technique
To spot, yes, I use things, cotton balls. I'll use straight cotton fibers. You can use things like paper towels to make texture. So yes,
Have you ever spritzed with the alcohol?
so I'll show you an example of what that would look like. So like I said, with the salt, with the watercolor, you can spritz with the alcohol, and I'm going to hold some of this back. So say I don't want this part of the painting to have this spritzing effect, then I'll hold it back. Let's see, make sure I'm not spraying you or me. Then I'll take my heat gun. And I'll actually dry that part. And there you have more of that kind of salty, watercolory effect. Now, can I undo that? Yes. Undo it. Again, just add more alcohol. And more of the color. So again, you can come back in, reinvigorate the inks over and over and over. So there's a lot of layering that I will do, and I will come back into paintings, set them aside, let them dry, give myself time to think about the whole composition. And then you can also, for example, I'll just throw one purple in there. The cool thing about the alcohol inks is they, again, will not muddy. They like to play with each other. And then I'll dry that with a little bit of the heat. Now, when I'm working at home and working with alcohol inks and heat, what do I wear? A respirator. The last thing you want is to suck in all of these alcohol ink fumes. I work in a very, very well ventilated room in my studio, AKA the basement. The great thing about that basement is it's all mine. So I can go to town with the inks. But the heat and the alcohol is ripe for fumes, and you certainly don't want to get overwhelmed with the fumes. I will also take breaks after a while. I'll go outside, breathe deeply, kind of clear out everything, and then come back in. But I do periodically will take some time to get away from the inks, to give myself a break from them. So that's a pretty good start of a base, and that again is on the prime panel. So I'm going to set that one aside, and I'd like somebody to help me choose what next substrate to use. Should I use Nara, craft plastic, tile? Let me put with tile.
Yeah, do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I am glad you picked that one. All right, so this is just a 6x6 piece of tile, Home Depot. You can buy boxes of this, or if you get lucky, you have somebody, a neighbor who's doing some renovation, and they have a bunch of these kinds of white.
Well, tiles do
Tile.
come in different colors too, right?
They do, so you could certainly work on a color other than white if you wanted to start out. I've worked on glass as well. Glass is very, very cool to work on because when you're done, it actually looks like stained glass. So you can actually frame that glass, spray it with the varnish, and it actually looks like stained glass when you're done. I'm sorry, I didn't bring any of those with me. I have a show I'm in right now in Pennsylvania, and a lot of my work is there, including the glass. Okay, so what I did, like I did before, I'm just taking a foam brush. This is, as you can hear, that's a lot of alcohol in there. But like I said, the great thing is, you mess it up, you wipe it off, start all over again. So I'm going to lay out I'm going to do some of these Coptic colors. These are just so cool and vibrant. I'm just going to get started with one color. Push it out. And I'll use a little bit of heat. Again, where I want this to go, as I use the heat tool, I can direct where I want the alcohol to flow.
You said you keep that on low.
I always keep it on low. This is high. And watch what happens. I kind of lose control. So if I keep it on low, so I'm fighting a little bit against the alcohol drying because it dries so quickly, which is why I keep it on low. So I'll add that one. And I look down, and when you look down, you can actually see where the alcohol has dried. So I'll just add a little bit more where I want the next color to go. Make sure it's nice and juicy. And I'll lay out the next color. About 3 drops of that. I like to start moving the colors generally with a puffer, just to get it where I want it to go. And then I'll go back in with the heat. Now I'm starting to smell this. Can you all smell anything? No? Okay, good. Again, the heat, that's what really, now watch what happens with the heat. The cool thing is it just makes these amazingly cool patterns, and you're in control of how you want the final layer to look like.
What kind of learning curve was there for getting used to pushing the paint around,
Just
what you expect?
Experimentation, lots of experimenting. And the fun thing is you can experiment to your heart's desire on ceramic tile. So I spent a lot of time working with ceramic tile and just playing, and just looking for different effects. So the learning curve is not too bad. Also taking a course at a community college, at a community center, is also advantageous as well. Now, you all have alcohol ink workshops. You need to have some. Get them on there. Oh, well, you gotta get a workshop going because this is too much fun. Now, another thing you can do is you can buy kits where you have like 3 colors, paper, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, $30, and you can just start playing.
And also you can go to Home Depot or a tile place and ask them if they have leftover
Yep.
tiles from the job, and you can buy them for like 10 cents each.
Exactly.
We did a workshop about 15 years ago. It was very basic. It wasn't just with the alcohol ink and the spray bottle. And what else did we have? Do you remember? Very basic, very basic. And they did beautiful work. Everybody loved it.
Well, I know we did it here. Yeah.
We did it here.
We
right
did it here. I still
During
have
our
some of
3-hour allotted period,
Yeah.
and, yeah, everybody loved it.
Yeah. it's
And
fun.
that's all we did was spritz or
Yeah,
blow on it or.
right.
Now, the one
Bring her
thing,
back.
one thing you don't want to do, and I do see a lot of alcohol ink artists do this, they use a straw. I highly suggest not doing that because when you're blowing, you're actually sucking it in. So you're blowing and then you go without thinking. So that's really not good. So it's not necessarily a good thing to be pulling into your lungs. Now, one of the things I really like, and I'll say it again and again, I really like these kind of dark baked in, it almost looks burnt to me. For some reason, I like that, but if you don't like it, come in with more alcohol. And then you can push that alcohol ink back out.
I like how you can control it. You could actually do a painting if you wanted to. And it would be like a watercolor.
Yes, and you can use brushes. I've seen people do paintings. What I'll do is after the ink is dried, I'll come in with like a silver and I'll do some detailing after the ink is dried. That's one thing I like to do. So you can do that as well. But like I said, you can just keep pushing, keep laying down. And what you think that you're going to get at the end is not necessarily what you planned on. But that's the kind of cool thing with the inks is that you're in control and it's in control. You're not fighting it, you're playing with it. I'll add a little bit more of this one down here.
Yeah, that was the first thing I wondered about, how you controlled those paintings so well.
And again, it's just layering, and more layering.
But it's that little puffer thing that you can push it around.
This is my favorite tool. And again,
Yes.
it's the Tim Holtz Ranger Puffer. Not all puffers are made the same. Some of them just don't puff right. But this one, it has this lovely way to just push.
I'm curious, when you said that you could use your little palette there
Mhm.
to combine colors. Once you combine them, then you use a dropper to pick it up.
Yes. And what I pick it up with,
Dry quickly then?
I pick it up with this. So here's an example of,
Yeah.
let's say there was a color in
You
here.
have 2 colors in there.
So you had 2 colors in here. You'd use one of these tools, these little plastic suckers. That's what I call them. And you just suck it up.
Yeah.
And then you would lay it down. I'll actually show you an example of that. So let me put out a couple
So if
of,
it dries, then
Mhm.
you can just add more alcohol.
oh yeah,
Make it a liquid again.
absolutely. So I'm going to drop one thing in here. I'm just going to let that dry while we're sitting around playing with this section.
Do the different colors interact with other colors differently or? Well,
You mean like when they touch each other?
I'm
Or,
just thinking like in watercolor, the watercolor paints, the colors are from different, different types of materials and they react differently depending on what those materials are. Is the same true in paint.
I think so.
I mean, like with
Yeah.
like you have like a cadmium red,
Okay.
so the cadmium is different than something that doesn't have cadmium. Are the inks the same way?
I think so. I mean, they come in like the same, I mean,
Range.
there's millions of colors, millions and millions of different colors. And I think that the alcohol ink producers produce the colors specifically so that you don't have to mix them. And so that you don't, so you don't have to mix them. There's such a vast variety of different colors. So let's keep playing with this little guy here. All right, so that blue, I'm going to dry it. And I'm going to move this around a little bit while I'm waiting. I also do, sometimes I will come in and I'll puff with one hand. You have to, you can also move with two hands to move the inks around as well. Okay, that blue is not quite dry yet. I'm going to be reinvigorating it, just so you can see what happens once it's dry. Okay, so if I've worked with the color, it's all dried out, then this is just a little bit of alcohol.
Now, what would happen if you put in all of that different colors, like yellow?
Mhm.
Would that interact with anything or?
Yeah, so I can take a green, throw a green in there. This is limeade. Put that in there. That's made a whole
So
different
if you
color.
mix like a blue and a yellow,
Yeah.
are you gonna get a green or are you gonna?
Yes, yes, you will. Okay, so now I know what you're talking about.
Get,
Yes.
as opposed to just yellow and blue mixed together.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah, so indeed, so here is a whole different color out of those two versus just the blue and just the bright, bright, bright. That's what the green looks like by itself. So you can mix colors and lay out those colors, yes.
So can you take your palette there, I call it a palette,
Mhm.
and you're gonna be done today.
Mhm.
And then you've got the alcohol inks in there. Just carry it with you. You don't have to.
Saran wrap it. Carry it with you. Come, go home. That color will still be available.
And you can zoom then alcohol it if you want to use that same color.
I'll just throw alcohol, just throw the isopropyl alcohol in it and just reuse it. So anything that dries in this palette, I can reinvigorate and reuse. It'll be
Kind of like watercolor.
kind of like
I
watercolor
would imagine you could use it in watercolor.
to
More alcohol, the lighter the pigment.
indeed, indeed. And then again, if you want more color, you just add more color. And so just for an idea of, cost effectiveness for these kinds of products. So a small bottle of this is 0.5 fluid ounces. These run about $3. You can also buy large, I don't think there's a lot of larger ones. Oh, maybe there's one. You can also buy them in larger sizes. Ranger comes, a lot of their colors come in larger sizes, so it's a little more economical. You can also buy these in packs of 3s. The packs of 3s, the colors go together. So that when you use them together, your composition will have all of the colors that, from the color wheel perspective, will all go together. For example, I use something called, I think it's called Farmer's Market, and it's a 3-pack for $12. Or 10, you can get it for $10, $12 on Jerry's Artarama, Blick, Michael's, Hobby Lobby. Farmer's Market had 3 colors. There was a green, a red, and a purple. Lettuce, cranberry, eggplant. Those 3 colors look divine together. So you can also buy in packs as well, so that you are automatically using the right kind of color. How am I doing on time? Good. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to set that aside.
Yeah, but I have a question.
Sure.
Online. So is it only alcohol that you can use to move the drying?
91%.
91%.
Right.
Has to be.
So not any paint or varnishes you might put on top of this when it's dry. I think you answered that, right? You said as long as the ink is dry.
As long as the ink is dry. Now, I have used fluid acrylic with alcohol ink. So yes, you can use other, if you want to do multimedia, you want to do multiple different kinds of, acrylic, fluid acrylic, other kinds of inks. I mean, I've seen it all. You can blend, you can add. So yes, you can do that as well.
So you have, so you have to be careful when you're putting your first layer of varnish on. It's not like you're gonna paint it on with a big brush, you disturb them.
Yes, exactly. But you can, once the alcohol ink is dried, you can paint on top of it. You're not going to disturb the alcohol ink underneath it. Once it's dry, right, yeah. With the tile, what I would do is I would resin it. Generally, I like to resin tile because I want it protected, and the resin provides that kind of protection.
But the varnish first on that.
No, varnish last. Varnish is always last. So the varnish is when you're completely done and you want to seal it. The varnish seals the inks.
Well, I mean,
on
with
it.
the resin.
So you want varnish first,
Yeah.
then resin. Yeah, you always want that varnish on there for moisture protection, for UV protection. That's why I always
And you
Use the
just
varnish.
use the Winsor Newton
spray.
spray.
Yeah, you can use matte or gloss. I like matte. This one's a good example. I'm gonna have this one on again. And you can feel this one. I want you to actually feel it. This one has acrylic. I used to, when I was first starting out with the alcohol inks, I did a lot of pieces where I was really into dotting. And I liked to use these dotting tools, which mandala artists use. Are you familiar with the mandala dotting? Little dot arts, where they rocks and things like that. So this tool, I literally took, when I was done with the underlying piece, which I liked, but I felt like I wanted to add more dimension to it. So I literally took acrylic paint with this dotting tool. It's just a little tool with a nib on the end, and they come in different sizes, different colors. Yes, thank you. And you can actually dot with the acrylic paint onto that surface. So I will take like a,
Also, you can go to Joanne Fabrics, with tax and free, and take your 50% off for the month.
If it's not on sale.
so I'll take something like Folk Art, which is one of my favorite acrylics, because I like the consistency of it. And I will literally just take the cap off, shake it up, and dip my little stylus into the ink, excuse me, into the paint, and then I will literally start dotting onto the surface. And I like doing that when I was first starting out. I just like to give that a little bit more dimension. So I'll pass that one around, and you can feel it. Hello.
I'm not here.
I'm not here. Okay. What I'm going to show you is, like I mentioned, this is one of these pieces over here. This piece is entirely a color called Monsoon, which is one of my favorite colors to use. And it's just been layered and layered and layered with Monsoon in the center. I took that stylus and that dotting tool for the flower in the center, and I dotted with silver alcohol ink and then white acrylic to make it kind of look like baby's breath. And I think I used a little bit of pink, just a touch of pink, or that white might have taken, no, I think I used a little bit of pink. But again, the white, if you haven't varnished it, any white that you apply onto that ink will take on the color of the ink underneath, which is why I like using the white titanium Folk Art. So I did use a little bit of what's called Piñata Blanco. Piñata Blanco, I take a little tiny squeeze brush or a squeeze bottle, I'll take a little bit of the pinata and I'll add isopropyl alcohol to it to dilute it. That allows me to produce, in this case, this is monsoon, and then these more floral looking areas, I used the white titanium and used my famous little puffer and just puff those out.
So the alcohol mixed with the paint dissolves the ink.
Yes. Let's get a good amount of alcohol on here and see what happens. And then once you use these little tools, you can always hold on to them and reuse them for, I buy big batches of them. I try to reuse what I can. I don't like going through plastic. Nobody does. So I really try my best to not have a lot of waste with these products. So I'm just going to layer out. Now, one thing I have tried doing, I have tried taping off. A lot of people have said, you know, it'd be really great, Nina, if you would just tape off your areas. The alcohol ink always seeps underneath. I've used blue tape. I've used masking tape. I've used duct tape. I mean, I've tried it all. And I'm sure someone out there has a solution. I just haven't figured it out yet.
What about masking that they use in watercolor?
Now, that's a very good point. So there is something called masking fluid, where it comes in a pen and you can mask out areas where you want the alcohol ink to not be. So you can use that as well, but it's expensive. And if I put it all the way around the edge of this, you could peel it off when you're done. I'm just not that, I haven't reached that level of dexterity quite yet. Maybe someday. So I'm going to throw out a pretty good amount of alcohol on here. Again, just using my little dropper. Oh, this is Nara paper. So this is synthetic paper. The brand name is called Nara, but people also call it Yupo. It's like Kleenex. People will say Yupo, and it's synthetic paper. Nara is just another synthetic paper brand. Another one that I really, really like, but that's super duper expensive, is called Evo synthetic paper made by Etc. That product is tough, tough, tough. I mean, you can do anything to that paper and it's just going to survive. Very, very expensive, but really worth it. And the flow of the inks on that surface is wonderful as well. So different surfaces, different brands, different flow. Nara is really, really good, and it's very heat tolerant. So I'm going to just lay out a little bit of this monsoon. Again, one of my favorites. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to blow it out and start puffing it out to get it out to where I want it to be. Generally, I work wearing dark colors because, as you can see, this does like to flow all over the place. And sometimes I get a little carried away. I'm kind of pushing out where I want it to go.
And I guess you could just brush it.
Yep, you could take a brush and just look at the different effect.
Kind of like it.
Yep, so you could
just
do that.
draw right in it.
Sure can. If I wanted to do something more abstract like that, you can lay that out. Now I'm holding this far back because I don't want to push the colors too much because I kind of like this layout. So I'm being a little bit more careful about how I want the ink to flow. And then you can come back in and say, I want this to come out a little bit more like that. And you can just keep on moving with it.
Well, you could just not use that there at all.
Yep, you can hold that.
Let it dry,
And you can let it dry.
just like that, and
Yep.
show a little more white.
Yep.
As opposed to blending. Could you define muddy, like, for me? I don't,
Sure.
you say it doesn't muddy?
So with watercolor, let's say you have a green and a red, and they touch each other. Well, what color are they going to turn?
Brown.
Right. If you have a green and a red with the alcohol ink, they're not going to turn brown. They're actually going to keep their colors. They'll blend a little bit, but they're not going to muddy together. They're not going to lose the reds and the blues or the reds and the greens.
But if you put it in a little bowl, it will.
It will in the bowl. It will in the bowl. If you mix it up in the bowl.
Yeah.
But if you lay it out, it's not going to muddy. Yeah. I'm going to try this out just so I can keep going here a little bit. And as you can see on the ends here, it almost has a purple. This is why I love monsoon. Monsoon is one color, but again, using the heat, which I like to use, brings out these purples. The narrow paper is not buckling under the heat. But if I wanted to come in now, I've got a little bit of blue and a little bit of alcohol on here. And I want to make some more detail.
Could you show us what it looks like when you spritz it with the alcohol and it all bursts?
Let's do some of that.
I like
Let's
that.
do that over here. So I'm going to hold this. Actually, I'm going to hold it with this.
It really bursts.
Okay. I'm going to hold back what I don't want. And I'll let that dry. Yeah, I love that effect. Especially it's kind of almost beachy, almost water, salt. So then I'll have that part like that.
And I guess you could put a color in the spritzer.
Yes, and I have done that as well. You can put colors in the spritzer as well, and it will spritz out that color. And I have loved doing that as well. Another tool that I like to use is another Tim Holtz. This is like what's an official term for this? A whacker. Hi, Ingrid, you win. This is a whacker. So let's say I wanted to have gold. I wish I had brought my silver. I'm a really big silver person, but we'll go with gold. So this is, I like, if I'm going to be using gold in my alcohol inks, I'm not going to use gold. I'm actually going to use this one, which is Pinata brand brass. It actually looks like gold. It doesn't look like brass. The Pinata gold, I don't like it. There's something about it. It doesn't flow right. It just doesn't feel right. Brass just looks like gold. So I'll put a little bit of that in my little well there. And the coolest thing, I don't know if you can see that. You see that kind of sparkle?
Yeah.
It's got like a really cool iridescence in it. So I can take that. I can take my little, what'd you call it? Whacker. Take my whacker. Cover up a little bit so I'm not whacking all over the place. So I want it to be about then I can take that. And now I have some of that gold.
Oh, there you go. When you tilted it a little bit, you can see that sparkle.
And on top of that, I'm going to start using some of the iridescent. This one is called Mermaid. So I'll take a little bit of the Mermaid. Throw that in my well. Straight. I'm going to use another one of my little droppers. Grab some of that, suck it up, lay it down. Once it's laid down, I'll take my puffer. And I'll add that sparkle and iridescence onto the piece as well. The neat thing about this puffer is it makes these kind of floral looks. I'll lay it down about there. And start pushing that in. So as you can see, I'm in control, but the alcohol, as it dries, you're not in control of that. So this is almost kind of becoming a little bit of a underwater kind of coral looking like piece. And I'm really liking that. More of that, and that's called, again, called Mermaid. And you can buy these in packs on the Pixis website, and they sell out super fast because everybody loves them. So I am a jerk and I buy boxes of them. When they go on sale, I get an email and I snatch them up as fast as I can. I'm sorry. I just love them so much. And they're just the same price as just the general alcoholics.
Differences, there are iridescent.
And they add on this just whole different look to it. So after I've done that, I would like to do a little bit of, so now you can see a little bit of that. I don't know if you can see that on screen. I'm going to tilt it a little bit. So you've got some iridescence in there as well. Another thing I really love, again, this is the Piñata Blanco mixed with just isopropyl alcohol. Yeah, when you start to see something, let me know. That's my favorite part.
Well, I see, yeah, I see a nose and.
So here's the white.
Gardens of the Galaxy.
Oh.
I'm going to start pushing those out. And what I like about the white with the puffer, it just looks floral. I'm going to lay one down there. Push out where I want it to go. I like it to interact a little bit with the effervescent mermaid. And again, it just adds this very cool additional layer and dimension. And I will put, I'll go home, I'll put this aside. And then I'll come back in and I will layer and layer and layer. The more layering you do, the more interesting the piece becomes. And it just will continue to morph into more, it just depending on what I want to lay out and how I want the inks to flow. And again, I can come back in with a paintbrush. And I can layer on top of it. Another thing I love to do with the white acrylic is if I wanted to start laying down, you can paint with white acrylic. In fact, I'm gonna display. Why not? Let's just see what happens. You can take a white acrylic and take a brush. I like using tiny brushes. So you want to just some line detail. You can just lay in a little bit of acrylic. Something wispy. Come back in. Right. And that'll engage a little bit with the acrylic. See how it turned pink? I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yeah.
And that's interacting with the acrylic.
I feel like the one in the frame is different than the other work.
The large piece?
Yeah. I mean, did you play the same way with that?
I did.
Just seems different than the other work on the table.
I wanted to bring that along just to show you that there are so many different scenes, compositions that you can do.
Right, I like that one. Yeah. What do you think your paper buckles?
You're done. There's nothing you can do. If your paper buckles, that's it. You're done. You can't iron it out.
Watercolor, you wet the back and then you.
So it's basically, I'll show you what will happen. Okay, crab plastic sheet. Show you what will happen. So if you bend it, you're done. There's nothing to do. It's bent.
You can cut it, make it smaller size.
Let me show you what happens with heat. So let's say I do a really high heat. I'm just going to throw down anything just so you can see what will happen. So this is actually, is this craft plastic? This is Yupo. Actually, this is actually a good example. I'll show you Yupo versus craft plastic. So Yupo is pretty heat tolerant. Craft plastic, not so much. So I'll do one of each. Let's see if I can get this all up here. There we go. Okay. Got some alcohol down there. I'll put some alcohol down here. Craft plastic, Yupo. All right, here we go. Heat gun. I'm really pushing the heat. I'm pushing it up against the paper really hard. And that's Yupo. We'll do the same thing with the craft plastic. And as that paper is buckling, you can see that the inks are kind of flowing into wells as it's buckling. Even the Yupo is starting to buckle.
You then won't find out it dries.
Nope. And I'll pass this around so you can feel what this actually. And I-
So does that
feels
mean
like-
you would use that paper on another substrate?
So what you could do, and I'll pass these around so that you can see, you can't tell from here, but what you could do is you could mount, say, the paper to wood or panel. And it, with really good adhesive. And that should flatten it out. But otherwise,
Then you really don't want to use these papers, then, right?
well, you just have to be careful not to push the heat on there so hard. You can feel underneath how it's bubbling. So that's why you have to be careful when you do use the heat. That
And
you
this
don't.
is the craft.
Yeah, that's craft plastic in front of you there, and that's Yupo. You can probably feel a little bit of the difference between the two. But I hit those really, really hard.
Now, what would happen if you didn't use the alcohol? You just put some of the alcohol ink
Down without the isopropyl? Is that what you're asking?
without the alcohol.
What would happen?
What would happen?
I'll show you.
But it seems like I didn't use alcohol.
Oh, you just use the actual inks.
Yeah.
So what will happen is if you just use the ink, you're not going to get the flow. Because the isopropyl is what's making the flow. And another thing, you can move it around. So let's just say I put down straight alcohol. So what did you do?
Two colors.
Okay. So you took two colors. And then what'd you do?
And then move it around.
Okay.
See what happens.
And so did you kind of do this? Did you play with it like this?
Now, it's been 15 years. But it was like birds when they touched each other.
Uh-huh.
I don't see it bursting.
So
You don't get the variation.
you're not, exactly. So this is straight alcohol ink, straight on paper. So as you can see, it has nowhere to go. So it's limiting itself and saying, that's as far as I'm going to flow because I've tilted it. And now it's stopped.
Now spritz it and see
Okay.
what happens.
Now you can spritz it. And if you spritz it, check it. Now
Will
It
it
is-
move it all?
with alcohol. So let's put alcohol around it. And up against it.
Looks like wedding paper and water.
Exactly. Exactly. So there, see the movement start?
Watercolor.
It's almost like wetting the paper.
Oh, wedding.
Ahead of time.
So now that I've laid out some alcohol around it, even after spritzing it, you can reinvigorate it. And then it starts moving.
That's definitely pushed watercolor with the hairdryer.
Yep. But with the world's smallest hairdryer?
No, not
Now, there was something on YouTube or Facebook, I guess, not a while ago, where they took, and I don't know, they didn't explain what it was, but they took a piece of paper, some canvas, or I don't know what it was, there was no detail. But they took a line and you could tell that it was really fluidy. So I'm thinking maybe it was alcohol, but they put one color and made a line. And then they put another color on top of that,
Mhm.
exactly on top of it, a different color and another color.
Yes.
The colors did not blend. And then they used the hair dryer or the heat blower crap, whatever. And then the colors just, it opened it up. It looked like an iris or something. It was gorgeous, but so you think that was alcohol because it didn't muddy,
Probably.
right? Because all the colors were true to themselves.
It sounds like either maybe a fluid acrylic or it sounds like alcohol.
Yeah, it must have been. So I'm thinking if it was acrylic, you really have to water it down to be able to move it around
Yes,
the way they did. And it didn't blend colors. That was interesting. It must have been alcohol.
yeah, if it didn't blend colors like that, it's
Yeah.
probably the alcohol ink.
It was gorgeous. It was beautiful.
So where did this paint come from?
This paint,
Pink.
oh, the pink. Okay, so Monsoon is a good example of an alcohol ink color that has, once it starts interacting in the chemical reaction that it has with the isopropyl alcohol. This takes me back. My dad was a research chemist. So I love chemistry. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I love this medium is because it's chemical. There are chemical reactions happening. So here, I think people can see from home, you're starting to see some purples and pinks just from one color, which is why I love Monsoon so much. Another one I'll show you is called eggplant. Eggplant also does the same thing. I'm gonna take another piece of plastic for that one.
So when you take these home now, are you gonna just stack them on top of each other or do you have to protect them?
I
Do
protect
something?
them with parchment paper
Okay,
between them,
all right.
and that seems to be just fine. So parchment paper, wax paper, but parchment paper is my favorite. So I'm just gonna go ahead and lay out my regular alcohol. And then one really important thing when I'm working with inks that I always try to tell myself to do, and very rarely do I pay attention to myself, is to close the inks, because I will inadvertently knock them over. Then inks go everywhere. But that's kind of hard to do when you're like playing around real fast. So yeah, I'll take these home. I'll see what I like. And then I'll just start continuing to layer and continuing to play with them. So these are generally just first passes. So this one's called eggplant. From the farmer series, lettuce, cranberry, eggplant. It's a meal.
So if you wanted to do something more realistic and you wanted to draw things on these papers, can you use a graphite or?
Yes. So yes, if you wanted to draw, people draw on them as well. Like I said, there are things called alcohol ink markers where people will draw realistic scenes, animals, landscapes. I mean, I've seen some amazing, amazing things. So I'm just going to blow these out. And then I'm going to take the heat to it so you can start to see how it blows out in different colors. So I'm working with craft plastic here, so I'm going to be a little light on, I'm going to hold the heat tool back. One big mistake people will do is they'll just jam the heat tool right up against the plastic or the synthetic paper. And it really does not like that at all. So again, just pushing gently. We'll push out a little bit more of this dark in here, When you lay out the alcohol, see what happens? It actually pushes the inks out. And again, I'm really just pushing. I'm not concerned here with my design at all. I'm more concerned with giving you an example of the underlying colors and how eggplant can be used with one single color, but it will morph into many different hues. And I'm starting to buckle a little bit here. I'm being really heavy with the heat. So I'm just going to let this dry out a little bit. And also you can, as you're watching this, you can also move inks by just moving your paper and letting them run. It's amazing what you'll start to see. It is a very, very cool medium. A pansy. Face. I love it when people, I see a whale. I see a dog. And then I'll see something, I'll go to my husband, do you see it? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see anything. So that's not quite dry, but I'm going to pass this around so that you can see. Can you all see that on the screen?
Oh, I
A
like
little bit of
that.
blue in there.
There's blues, there's
I like that
purples.
spray.
And again, I just kind of moved it around. So I'll show you one more example of kind of movement. Pass that around so you can feel the difference. Do one on narrow.
Is it permanent color? It's in your clothes.
Look at the blue one.
Yes, it is permanent. This is why I wear gray, black, brown. But yeah, I have many outfits that have permanent alcohol. I should probably wear a smock. All right, this is the last one that is very, very cool. When you were talking about movement. So this piece here, I'm going to do something similar to this. Sorry. I can't see at home what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm going to do something similar to this piece here. Okay.
I'm sorry, there isn't a heat resistant resin.
That's a,
You know, so you could make a hot plate. with
oh,
something on,
yeah.
Right.
People always ask.
You know, or how about, you know, a cup of coffee or. Oh.
And feel free to ask questions along the way.
Yeah, well, there's questions on the screen.
Yeah.
There's five, so
Oh, there's
five
questions on the
chats.
screen?
I'm looking at
Oh,
the
no.
wrong place. Yeah, I've seen that.
Oh,
You
no.
know, there are only
Oh,
five
there's
people
seven.
out there.
Oh, there's 7 people, 7 participants.
Oh, there's some
Five
chats.
chats. So
Okay, when
somebody
Joe
has-
comes in, I'll ask him to show the chats. Yeah. When he comes back in, we'll get him to find out what the questions are for our viewers.
And yeah, we should show the screen.
Yeah, well, you can see like the gallery view of everyone.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm doing with this piece of narrow paper, this round, because I'm just giving it a good coat. Now, I'm literally going to hold this up, take a couple of colors. 1, 2, let's do a little fairy. I'm going to do fairy, sherbet, wild plum, and a little stone washed. All right. Watch this. There we go. Joe, can you see the chats?
If you put the alcohol, just like try to do a white edge all the way around, not put alcohol on it, and could you create a border?
Like with masking fluid? Yes, I most certainly can.
So Joe, can we see the chat people? There's 5 people that have tried to chat.
No, those are previous chats.
Oh, they're previous.
Oh,
Oh, and we answered those.
Yeah.
I'm hiding this from you.
Yes, you are. Yeah. One it was.
Now, what I can do with this, so people can see on screen,
yeah. You got that?
Yeah.
okay? You can take small one of these brushes, but I'm gonna use the big brush. It's very wet. So I've got a wet foam brush.
Does the foam break down with alcohol on it?
You know, like with anything, it'll break down eventually. The
You can
alcohol.
reuse that sponge a couple of times?
You can, and what I like to use is what I call a dirty brush. If I've been using a brush and it has alcohol ink on it, I save it and then I reinvigorate it with alcohol. And I can just start using the brush as a tool with the alcohol ink on it. So I'll put it in a baggie. I'll put a little sticky note on it, monsoon, set it aside. If I'm going to be working on a monsoon piece, I'll get that foam brush out. I'll put alcohol ink on it, or excuse me, just isopropyl alcohol on it. And then it reinvigorates the alcohol. Now, one of the reasons why I like to use an iridescent is because it just has these such cool hues to it. So I'll lay those out as well. And again, I'm taking my foam brush and I'm just very lightly bringing down those colors. And then it naturally, whoops. Undo that. It will naturally flow down. And then if I have a lot of inks, I'll turn it and let it flow down as well.
I like that paper towel. Can you take that?
You know what? You are, who are you? You have, you know, there is this, people actually will hold on to their alcohol ink paper towels. I think I got it. A little bit. Thank you. I appreciate that. People will actually hold on to onto those towels because they look so cool. All right, so that big mess here, I'll just set that aside. Then I will finally put a little heat on there. Nara takes heat pretty well. I don't have to do a whole lot of heat. And then this piece. And I don't know if people from home can see some of the iridescence in there. So that is, how long did that take me?
Yeah.
Less than 5 minutes.
What's the setup? So, like cooking, having everything chopped up.
Yep, you have everything chopped up and ready to
You
go.
can really see it, yeah.
So
The iridescence.
this piece was just simply essentially the same thing, just a little bit more. I think with this one, I think I used a paintbrush. So you can use a paintbrush, you can use a foam brush, you can use your finger, you can use cotton, you can use paper towels, anything that you use in any of your artwork, that you can use the same thing with the alcohol inks as well. Questions?
That's pretty thorough.
Yes. You can set me up for a workshop, I'd be happy to. So like I said, what I'll do is I'll go home. I'll take something like this. I don't like the pink. I'll scrape it out. I will literally go home, take a razor blade. We'll scrape off this. And then I'm going to come back in and continue adding more and more of the monsoon and more of the,
Now, why wouldn't you
Effect.
do it with the alcohol and blot it out?
well, I don't like the way this pink came out with the acrylic.
I like that thing.
You like it? Maybe I'll keep it. You know, you just never know. It's a little different. It's a little surprise. So, you know, one person says,
What if you turn it upside down?
and you know, that's the coolest thing.
We had a oval, it could be a woman in a beautiful.
Oh,
dress.
yeah. I like
Yeah.
that.
There's,
I need to get in.
That's her waistline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's amazing what you will start to see in these pieces. Now, another thing I'm going to do one last thing.
Psychiatrist from the law.
you're in trouble.
Oh, I'm almost out of time. So the last thing I will do is something like this. Once this piece is finished, I will probably come in and I will take a stencil. I'll lay out the stencil. I'll secure it with masking tape, which I have somewhere, onto the sides. Thank you. Oh, you're handy.
Makes a good assistant.
He's very good at assisting. Thank you very much. I'll lay that down. And just so you can see, I'll just do a tiny little bit of that acrylic. So I'll take white acrylic. I will literally just start painting it out. But again, what I love, as you can start to see how the white is turning pink? I don't know if you can see that from where you are on the screen, but you should see.
Is that a special? Yes, it is. I
Just,
know.
this is folk art, multi-use, multi-surfaces, plaid series, Hobby Lobby, Michaels. Folk art is my favorite. I just love the consistency of it. I like it's nice and juicy. I like the flow. I do like to put the stencils on a bit of an angle. I don't want it right smack in the middle of the piece. And then I'll also take like part of this piece off to the side over here. And I'll just do a little bit of that stenciling as well.
So are you thinking balance a lot when you do,
Yes,
even the, when you're putting the paint down, balancing different colors on?
yes. And I'm watching as I'm going along to see what colors the white is turning. And I want pink where I want it, purple where I want it, and a little bit of the blue. So yes, I'm conscientiously thinking about that as well. If I go harder and thicker on the white,
Now, how do you clean your stencil?
water. It's
Right
acrylic
away before it dries.
right away before it dries. Yep. Just simple water, just rinse it off in the sink. Like the brushes for the alcoholing?
Yeah.
Alcohol. No, I just use straight alcohol. And then I'll rinse it off with water. It is not a very expensive medium. The most expensive thing I would think is the papers, the prime panels. Framing is expensive. I like to mount things onto wood and resin for that reason, because it's so expensive to frame. That's like a hot and dirty there. But again, you probably see on my brush, the white is now kind of a pink. And then once I'm done that, take the stencil off. And then you've got the beginning of a stencil. And you can buy these stencils. I think I have a 50-pack of these guys. Amazon, I think. And they're really great. Plastic, you just rinse them off in water, you're done. And then rinse off those and good to go. Again, I like to have, now if I varnish this with the spray varnish before doing the paint would remain white. It would not suck up that alcohol ink color. But I like it to take on that little bit of the undertone. It just adds more texture and interest. Any other questions? Great. Thank you guys. Wonderful.